Hey folks, so I'm just going to walk you through the updated Assignment 3 version. So the big thing that I want you to take away is that I am still asking you to craft a multimodal children's story and to include a one-page single-space reflection where you're talking about the multimodal choices that you made. Here's what makes it easier though. One, I know this sounds silly, but doing it by yourself is actually a lot easier than a collaborative project. That's why collaborative writing projects are a learning outcome of the course, because it is an actually harder thing to do. You're negotiating different communication styles, workflows, creative idea clashes, all that good stuff. It's something you have to do in the real world and the school world, all the worlds, pocket universes. Anyway. So that's one of the reasons why it's a learning outcome, is because it's harder. So doing it by yourself is actually going to make it easier. The other thing that is going to make it easier, as you see in point 1 here, is that instead of pulling the story out of thin air, I want you to start with a classic fairy tale or a folk tale that's already been written. All right? And then I want you to read that story, take note of all the things that are kind of messed up about it, and then make some notes about how you might revise that story or remix that story. This is going to be easier because the story's already been written. You're not reinventing the wheel, you're improving it. So ask yourselves questions like, how can I empower the characters of all genders? How might I tell a story with more diverse characters? How might I overhaul an ending to make it less stereotypical? Or how might I empower a character to help him or her or theirself out of a situation instead of waiting to be saved, right? How can you give them agency? How might you tell the story from a different perspective of maybe someone who is voiceless in the classic telling or someone who's vilified, right? Like imagine telling the story from the perspective of like the evil stepmom in Snow White. And, like you can imagine it starting off, like her writing it as a blog, like, first of all, it was just an apple, right? And then just, going from there, right? So the next thing that I want you to do, right, is I want you, because you're going to have to turn this project in online, I want you to make sure that the multimodal genre that you're choosing is one that is going to be a digital one. This means that you could potentially do a podcast, or you could do a digital scrapbook of maybe Puss in Boots and do that on Tumblr, right? Or you could like tell the story of Cinderella, right? As like a Twitter thread, right? There are a lot of different things you can do. You can also mix low-tech and high-tech modalities by maybe taking an already existing storybook that you have in your house that no one is going to get mad at you for doing, where you basically draw over the images that are already there using some sort of lovely graffiti to make more inclusive or badass imagery, right? And then you can take photos of your graffiti art and put those photos either in like a slide deck in a PowerPoint, or even showcase that, tell your story on Instagram, right? There are all sorts of different ways you could do this. You could also take that same book that you've kind of done some fun graffiti art on, and you can also like, revise the words in that storybook, and then, tell that story using like a YouTube video where you're kind of turning the pages, right? And telling that story. So you've got a lot of modes working there. If you're like, hey, look, GPAT, I'm not super artistic, that's super fine. Like you can go on someplace like DeviantArt where there are artists sharing their work, and you can see like LGBT, you might find like LGBT or body or disability inclusive like representations of different storybook characters, or racially diverse representations of different storybook characters. Like for instance, you might find, LGBT versions of Prince Charming and Sleeping Beauty, right? And then download those images, put them into like a PowerPoint or a slide deck, and then, include your own like retelling where maybe Sleeping Beauty in this instance is a prince, right? You could also, if you're looking for like a photo essay type thing, you could use Texture Writer. It's just like this photo essay neat place. We're thinking images and text to tell a different iteration of Snow White and the Huntress, right? Or, if you're into like free comic book software, you could even, imagine telling something like Rumpelstiltskin from the perspective of the dwarf, right? Using like maybe comic book software like Pixton or comic strip software like Canva, right? So these are just some ideas to think about. Now, the next thing that I don't want you to forget, right, is that you are going to have to include a one-page single-spaced reflection of all the multimodal choices that you've used to create your story. Now, obviously, there are going to be some spaces online for you to reflect on the choices that you're making along and along, but I want you to consider these questions, right? So, like, what multimodal genre did you use to tell your story? Like, why did you choose that genre, right? What digital platform did you use to publish your story? Did you upload it on SoundCloud? Is it an Instagram story? Did you do it on Twitter or YouTube? Like, why did you choose that? Like, how did that shape the story that you were able to tell, right? And then, like, what tools and software did you use, right? Did you download other people's art, which is super awesome? Did you draw stick figures? Did you use pens, pencils? Did you do collage work? Like, what did you use, right? And then how did those tools help you create a story? Like, what mood were you able to create with those tools, right? In terms of visual choices, here we're talking about, okay, what use of color or shapes or repetition, alignment, proximity, contrast, fonts, white space, the illustration of characters. Why did you make those choices? And how did it help you produce a certain effect or a feeling in your audience, right? If you're doing an audiobook, like, did you use certain volume, a pitch? Did you use a pause? Apparently I can't spell pause, but I'm just going to correct that while we're here, right? Did you do some hesitation? Was there some emotion or a tone with some voice acting, right? Like sound effects, all those types of things. Did you wrangle a younger or older sibling or relative to voice act a character? Who knows? You tell me, and then why did you do that, right? What gestural choices did you employ? Now, obviously, this would be if you're doing like a YouTube video, maybe where you're reading a story, or hey, who knows? Maybe you've decided, nope, stop sock puppets. That's what I'm going to do, right? But we're talking here about facial expressions, hand movements, body movements. Why did you make those choices? And then how did it help you produce a certain effect or a feeling in your audience, right? And then finally, don't forget that, like words, right, is another form of modality. So what reading level did you choose, right? What kind of inclusive word choices did you choose? Were you going for an ironic feel or something really sincere? Were you going for some witty dialogue? Did you use no dialogue at all? Or what character point of view did you choose, right? And again, why did you make those choices? And how did it help you produce a certain kind of effect or a feeling in your audience? And then lastly, too, you can wrap it up by saying, hey, like, here's where I think I did well. And here's something that I think if I had more time, I would improve, right? Or here's the future. I want to take this project and do something with it. I want people to see this, right? So those are the kinds of things that you should be talking about in your one-page single space, I can say that, reflection, right? So those are the things I want you to think about. I'm going to walk you through just like I would with the group project. I got y'all. We're going to do this, right? But that's what I got. All right. So I'll see you on the Google Doc and on Slack.